Hey everybody, this is Dark Guardsman, and since my brother's cat decided to wake me up, we're going to do a video at 6 in the morning to show how I overly zealously test mods. Now the reason why we're doing this is I've decided to work on a new piece of code method to fix a bug. Now the bug was, if you pick blocked, you wouldn't get the result back, and it wasn't just a pick bug. It was a little bit of everything. So it was like if you broke the tile, you did a few other things, it wouldn't drop the correct item because the state, which is what Minecraft uses in the newer version to actually identify the block, and I'll show you how the code looks like. So what we do is, like, instead of calling in 1.7, we would call set block and with metadata. You would basically set a block instance, which would turn into an ID, and you would set a metadata, which would also then store in there. And that's still kind of how it works in 1.12. When you actually encode something to the chunk and it actually saves and loads to the disk, it only saves the ID and metadata. 1.13, of course, this has changed to now be a completely different system. Whenever that version comes out, it'll be beautiful because I'll get rid of a lot of hacky code that we used to have. But when I went to go do simple code, let's see if I can find the block code here because I completely lost track of the place where I was at. So what I had thought how this code worked, and this was explained to me by somebody else, and apparently they explained it completely wrong to me because they were like, hey, all you have to do is implement get actual state, and that will get the actual state of the block, and it'll set it into the chunk, and you'll be able to do your thing. And in this case, what we actually do is, because the rotation is set in another place, we just set the tiering, which will give us our actual state. It gives us our rotation value, so that way we know what direction the actual launcher is placing, so it'll place in every direction. And then it sets the tier so that you get the color and different model for the actual thing. What nobody actually bothered to tell me is that get actual state is only for rendering. This only works for rendering, and there's also collision box and a few other things that actually it's used for, but specifically this is a render thing. It's meant to get you the actual state on the client to do most of the client type things. There's a few instances where it is used on the server, and it's kind of used intermittently, like it's not consistently used. What will happen is you'll find methods that will call get state from the actual world, and then you'll find methods that call get actual state, and there doesn't seem to be a standard of where it's supposed to be used or not. But through a lot of testing and a little bit of help from the Minecraft mod development Discord, we figured out that you're not supposed to actually set your state system in here. You still need to do this because this is actually what the render code uses, and your renderers will break if you don't have it. But you need to find another solution to actually set the state properly. And of course we didn't figure out a good way to do this because there's no standardization for it. There's actually a patch that's going to be implemented at some point that will somewhat fix this. It's specifically for the get item drops. So when you actually call get drops, and we don't have an example here, but what would end up happening is this will get fed, it'll grab some information, so it'll get damage drop. Now I only have the state available here, so this is why I actually call state get value, get properties. The damage drop only gives me the state information. Now because this is only being set with my rotation, I don't have any more information to go on. I can't get the tier property, so it was always returning a tier 1 tile, which was the wrong type. So if you broke a tier 3, and this wasn't just for this, it would work for basically all the parts. So if you dropped a screen, you broke a frame, you broke the base, it would give you the wrong thing back. In order to fix this, what ended up actually happening is that in the first tick, so the very first tick, I end up setting the block state. This is not a very good solution, and we actually should do something like this: is to remove set state at hack when forge patches TE access and get drops. To be honest, I'll probably actually leave this in here all the way to 1.13 because 1.13 fixes the problem, and what it does is actually you no longer have block IDs, you no longer have metadata, you just have states, and it saves everything as states, which is really cool because it completely opens up the possibilities of what we can do. But going back to this, so the reason why we're overly zealotly testing this is because effectively what I am doing in this method, I'm actually setting the block state, which will actually go in and will call a series of methods, and it'll do a whole bunch of checks, and will update the chunk, which will then go through and update the lighting, which will then go through and do a ton of other stuff. So what we want to do is we want to overly test it to make sure that if I put this into an actual environment, I'm not going to increase the latency, so we're not going to cause a whole bunch of FPS drop, we're not going to cause a whole bunch of everything else. I doubt we're actually going to cause FPS drop because FPS drop is entirely render based, although we do have some FPS drop simply because these are actually tethers and they're not static renders. These will be switched over to static renders at some point, so that's not a problem. The main thing we're actually worried about is chunk updates and lighting updates. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a ton of these. And this is how you kind of overly zealotly test something. You take something so far to the extreme that you should never see it in the actual world. And if it runs okay in an extreme method, then you don't need to worry about the code being a performance ROM. This is the layman's way of actually testing something, because the actual way you would do this is you would actually write a whole bunch of automated tests, but I don't really feel like messing with an automated test suite to actually get it running today. Even though it's technically been updated and it should work, we're just going to do it this way. This might actually be useful here later. I might come back in here and recycle all these launchers and do a huge redstone missile launcher later, so this is actually not a horrible idea. And of course this is entirely annoying my cat, which is my brother's cat actually sitting behind me, who wants fed. Cat is still yet to figure out that it doesn't get fed until about 7:30, and it's 6:30 right now. I'm gonna claim daylight saving maybe. Still, this cat's smart enough to realize that that's not how this works. So we're gonna put a whole bunch of these down, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna save and load the world a couple times, and we're gonna see what exactly happens with the load time. It's not a perfect test, but what we're exactly looking for is lag spikes, stutters, preferably not a cow to get in the way. I don't have butcher commands to get rid of the entities. Surprisingly, turning off mob spawning does not turn off entity spawning. I wonder if there's a separate command for this. And we missed a spot? Oh, that's interesting. So we discovered a bug in the process of testing this, so apparently that's a valid placement. That's not a good thing, though. That tells me there might be something wrong. Well, actually, hold on. While we're doing this real quick, I don't think I ever tested this. No, I did not. Good thing we tested that. I'll have to fix that later. That's actually literally just a cam place missing check. That's literally what that is. To be honest, the multi-block handlers are supposed to validate and actually not place if when you go to do that, but something's missing probably. Really easy to adjust for. Go ahead. I think this would be the last row we place. To be honest, what I would actually want to really do with this is I would want to fill this to every direction just to get a good test, but we have more than enough here. And of course, you're now seeing the nice magic of Minecraft's render distance. One of the cool things, if you ever get to a static tile, that this problem where you can get outside the render range will go away, which will be really nice because you can see everything. I don't think we'll ever statically tile the missiles themselves, simply because I do want to eventually replace those with non-cube based renders. I don't know if we can get away with that. Well, I'll have to definitely do some research. Anyways, let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to shrink the window down, and what I want to look at is the console down here, and we're going to look at the seconds. And if it's anything over a second, then we have to revisit our strategy of how this works. No problem there. Basically, that world loaded, I want to say less than a second. And we'll put save. There's a slight hit there with FPS. You can definitely look in the top corner and see my FPS. The cool thing is, it's working, and it's not too big of an issue. The only problem I can foresee that this might cause is every time we set the state, we are triggering a block update. So if you had anything nearby that would also trigger block updates, you can cause a cascading block update trail. So that is something to be careful with, and if somebody ever runs into a problem like that, please tell me, and I'll definitely revisit this issue and look at it, maybe see if I can fix it. Although anything that can cause a cascading block update probably would be a problem for you in that case. Water updates would be an issue, fire updates would be an issue. Chest up, I think, even has a cascading update issue. Anything with a chunk border might be a problem, although there is code I'm definitely working on to work on things like the multi-blocks not causing chunk errors. So I think if I hit one of these keys, oh. We apparently crashed the game. Whatever, I'll leave you guys here and I'll be back with more videos, and this was just meant to be a one-off short thing.